All right, so hello everyone. My name is Ahmad Konainah, and today I'll be presenting about the Refugee Virtual Academy, which is aimed to empower Syrian refugees with virtual university access, higher education access. And this is the outline. Basically, I'll be starting with my journey, a resilient journey from Syria to Armenia to Lebanon to AUB, basically. I'll be talking then about the Syrian crisis landscape, moving on to the refugee education in Lebanon, the general crisis. I'll be taking a focused angle to talk about the barriers to higher education for refugees in Lebanon, moving on to assess the previous initiatives and models that have been done to fix this problem, to try to resolve this problem and to close the barriers to higher education. And finally, I'll be introducing my intervention, which is the RVA, or Refugee Virtual University. So I'll be starting by showing a video about my journey from Syria to Armenia to Lebanon. So that was about a 9-year journey in 2 minutes, but I'm going to tell you more about the journey now in more details. So when the war erupted in Syria in 2011, I lived 5 years through the war under the rebels, going to school every day under the rockets and the rebels and everything. Then when I reached high school in 2016, I had two choices: either to go to military service, which is mandatory in Syria, and leave my education, or to actually pursue my education and find an opportunity that gets me out of Syria. And luckily, there was the United World Colleges scholarship, which is one of the 18 leading colleges around the world. And I applied the first year in 2015. I got rejected, but then in 2016, I applied again because I did not lose hope. And out of 428 applicants from Syria and the Palestinian Syrians who are living in Syria, only 8 were accepted, and I was one among them. So I went to a new country. I got accepted to Armenia. And I went to a new country, a new language. Although, yes, it was a European school and everything was in English, but I had zero English. I did not know how to speak English. And I had to learn new language. I had to, I was 15 years old going for the first time traveling to a new country. And surprise, no surprise, the Damascus airport was not working. So I had to travel to Lebanon and to use the Rafiq Hariri International Airport to actually travel to Armenia. And those 2 years doing my IB diploma, which was the rigorous program, the International Baccalaureate Diploma program in Armenia, After having 2 difficult years of learning English, going into depression for the first year because we were 200 people from 86 nationalities. Everyone knew how to speak English except of me. And so after 2 years, I made it. I got a bilingual international baccalaureate diploma, and I graduated from UWC Dilijan. And I thought that the IP diploma is a passport to actually go to any university I want because, you know, it's international. And I applied to 25 universities in the UK, in the US, in Canada, in the UAE, and in Turkey. And I got accepted with full scholarships to 25 universities in those countries. But unfortunately, I couldn't go to any of them because I am Syrian and I couldn't get the visa to any of them. And Lebanon was the only country that did not require visa. So I had to come to Lebanon in 2018, in August 2018. And here where my journey started in Lebanon between 2018 and 2020, where I had to clean bathrooms, to teach English in the morning and clean bathrooms in the afternoon. So my students used to see me in the afternoon. This is our teacher? Yes. الشغل مش عيب. And then I worked in customer service remotely in the UAE, and I taught in 2 private centers in Lebanon. In 2020, my sister was scrolling through Facebook, and a random ad about the Middle East Partnership Initiative Scholarship, the Tomorrow's Leaders undergraduate scholarship, popped in. And she told me about it. I applied, and in 2020, I got the MEPI scholarship at the American University of Beirut. And here my journey started in 2020 at the American University of Beirut. And I made it a vision and an aim and an objective for me to make the most out of this experience. And I started my journey online. It was very difficult. But then when we came back on campus, I started getting involved in all the extracurriculars available on campus, and I became the president of the TEDx AUB Club, moving on to the Secretary General of the Beirut Model United Nations, which is the largest student-led MUN in Lebanon. And then finally, I became the Chief Executive Officer, the CEO of AUB Outdoors, the largest student-led event in the MENA region. And AUB Outdoors is happening on 25 and 26 of May, so hopefully you will join us. That was my journey. That was my journey. I'm graduating this semester, and I'm very happy about this journey because it taught me a lot. But now let's take a closer look into the Syrian crisis landscape and to my intervention. So I'll be talking here about the Syrian war and how the education crisis jeopardized the future for children, and then the refugee integration straining the resources in Lebanon. Then we are going to talk about the Ministry of Education and Higher Education, the National Education Response Plan, gathering all the aid initiatives in Lebanon to mitigate the risks, and finally the Interministerial Stabilization Policy, which aims to implement long-term solutions instead of short-term solutions. So as you know, many schools were bombed in Syria, putting the education in a crisis, in a huge crisis. The future is jeopardized because we don't only have a lost generation, we might also have an invisible generation. And finally, the Syrian war, it had a huge impact on education because people are no longer going to schools because they have no schools to go to, basically. As you know, Lebanon was one of the generous host countries that accepted refugees, but they were quite a lot. So since the Ministry of Higher Education and Higher Education, they wanted to actually integrate refugees. Lebanon had a no-camp policy, so they wanted to assimilate refugees with the host communities. And this posed a problem with hosting this huge number of people, which is now recorded to be 3 million people, refugees. So the Ministry of Higher Education implemented the Education Response Plan, which aims to provide remedial remedial English language to refugees, to teach them how to deal with the new curriculum in Lebanon, because the curriculum in Syria is taught in Arabic, but in Lebanon it's taught in English. So this was also one of the challenges that refugees faced. And also they had coordinated with a lot of NGOs that were part of responding to this crisis. and that was part of the coordination efforts. But then there was the interministerial stabilization policy, which focused on long-term solutions instead of short-term solutions, because it's a huge crisis and short-term solutions do not work. So the long-term solution was about stabilization policy and social cohesion. And it included 9 objectives, and it was implemented in 2017. And basically, this, in short, was to actually integrate refugees with the host community and to have them study with the Lebanese nationals at the same time instead of having them study in the afternoon shift. So the refugee education in Lebanon, if we talk about statistics, so we have 12 million displaced from Syria, which is 50% of the pre-war population in Syria. We have over 1 million in Lebanon. This is the official recorded number, but it is not the correct number. And basically, Syrians, the refugees in Lebanon, they now account for 25% of the whole Lebanese population. And if we talk about challenges, so we have 50% school students, they are Syrians, so they are straining the resources. And the employment doubled in Lebanon, definitely, because Lebanon has its own problems as well. And the GDP growth declined from 8 to 10% to 1 and to 2%. So what are the barriers? Now we were talking about education, but now we are taking a focus on higher education because this is the focus of my project. So what are the barriers to higher education for refugees in Lebanon specifically? So the university access disparity. So we have the university access to higher education universities and colleges in Lebanon. It's less than 6%. And the Lebanese attainment rates is larger than 35%, which creates a sharp gap in access between Syrians and refugees and Lebanese nationals. So the discrimination and admission process to the universities for Syrian refugees, basically there is bias against refugee status because once you are a Syrian refugee, you have that barcode that you get from the UNHCR, and then you have the refugee status. And once you have the refugee status, you are looked at, they look at you down basically. And then this created a discrimination in the admission because they look at your nationality and they ask for your nationality, whether to accept you or not to that university. And there are a lot of complex legal status challenges because once you apply to some institutions, you have to have a residency permit. And if you don't have that residency permit, you cannot get into that university or into that institution. But to get a residency permit, you have to have a Lebanese national sponsoring you, and that has a lot of factors taken into consideration before they consider you a qualified one to actually sponsor a Syrian refugee. But also there are obstacles for qualified refugees. And the universities, basically, they have quotas limit admissions because they don't have enough funding. And then there are elusive enrollment verifications because many people, many Syrian refugees, they lost their baccalaureate because once they fled Syria, they did not have time even to gather their official papers and documents. And then in Lebanon, basically, Syrians are not allowed to open bank accounts and rent houses and all of those implemented policies. Finally, as I mentioned before, we have the academic and language barriers because we have 83% of the Syrian refugees in Lebanon, they missed schooling. So going to higher education is going to pose a huge challenge because they didn't even have the foundations and the basics of education. Then we have missing transcripts and diplomas, as I mentioned now, because they did not have time to collect them. And finally, they struggle with the language proficiency because most of the universities in Lebanon, they teach in English, and people coming from Syria, they are proficient in Arabic, not in English. So what are the previous initiatives that have been implemented? We have in 2014, we have the DAFI program, and it globally funds education for 33,000 plus refugees, but in Lebanon, they only support less than 400. Moving on to the second one, which is the Catholic Action, they target the support for special refugee populations, and they tailor their program to address unique needs, only unique needs, not all the needs. And what are the gaps in here? They have a limited reach to address the scale of the issue, and they have a resource constraints affecting the program expansion like the country. Finally, we have Badalea, and Badalea was the most successful among them, but it also had some gaps. So they have a one-year preparatory program, and they target the disadvantaged student populations, but also they have access limitation in reaching all the disadvantaged students among in Lebanon. And then they have adequacy of resources for effective implementation. They don't have a lot of resources because, as we mentioned, there are constrained resources. So what is my proposed intervention? It is the RVA, where we unlock knowledge. It is the Refugee Virtual Academy. And what are the mission and vision? So basically, our mission is to empower Syrian refugees in Lebanon. We are starting in Lebanon through flexible, because it is virtual, it is flexible, quality higher education opportunities, transcending the physical boundaries, again, because it is virtual, and fostering personal and professional growth, because we don't only focus on studying and on the coursework, we also focus on soft skills. And what is the vision? Basically, we want to revolutionize the higher education for refugees, and we strive to dismantle the barriers and to expand access and to catalyze the socioeconomic development, paving the way for brighter futures and empowered community. So this is the framework and the key features. We have accessibility through virtual platform. We have tailored curriculum for diverse needs. We don't only have a set in stone curriculum. And then we have peer support that fosters the inclusive community, because it is a problem to have a virtual online one. So that's why we have the peer support mentors, and we have the mentorship guides, personal and academic. And finally, we have innovative assessment that promotes holistic learning, not only having exams and quizzes and all of that. So who are the professors, or who are the instructors, and what are the programs? So the main focus of RVA, it is by refugees for refugees. So we are going to identify and select some refugees within the camps in Lebanon, and definitely the qualified ones, and have them prepare those curriculums to have the intensive programs that ensure effective preparation, to have to elevate the educational standards, and definitely to prioritize the integration of emerging technologies, because we are in the 21st era, we are in the AI world. So what are the KPIs that we are talking about? We have some KPIs, and I'm going to tell you in a minute, why do we have KPIs? Why do we have key performance indicators, basically? So we are talking about outreach and impact. We are talking about accreditation progress, about academic performance, about satisfaction surveys, about employment qualification, and so on and so forth. So we are going to take those KPIs to basically envision the future, to see if we can move from phase 1 to phase 2, because RVA is not going to be accredited in the first place, but then we aim to create a network in this academy to actually gain the accreditation and have something for students who are going to higher education to use once they want to access job opportunities, basically. And there is a website here, but we don't have time to see it. And I want to end my presentation by calling to action, by joining us in revolutionizing the refugee education with RVA solutions, inspired by my journey from Syria to AUB, as you saw in the video. Let's break the barriers together and create opportunities for all. Thank you.